And welcome back to the Wood Library for another exciting episode of construction. So today what I'm building is a 3-section compost bin. The reason I'm doing that is because we already have 3 compost bins, perfectly good ones, but they're plastic. They're rather hard to drain, they're very hard to get the compost out of the bottom because even one actually doesn't have a hatch. You actually have to dismantle the whole bin. So they're pretty awkward. This one will be a lot easier, so we can put the new compost in one bay, and then when it's broken down a little bit, it can be shifted and shifted again to keep the production flowing. The front, I'll be using sliding timbers that will just slide down the front like this into the front sections, and we'll use that to hold everything in place, but they can be slid out of the top when we need to clean out the bins. The main structure is being built out of 50mm thick sleepers. These are just pine sleepers, the cheapest, heaviest timber I could get for the job. 200mm high, so we're going to have at least 4 stacks, maybe even 5 stacks, up to 1 metre high, sitting on the ground to complete the job. And then to finish off, I'm going to build some lids for them, so that's going to keep the heat in and hopefully the birds and pests out at the top. Let's see how we get on. So we start off by just cutting the 3-metre pine sleepers up and basically chopping 1 metre off the end of 5 of them, and then trimming those metre-long lengths down to 700 and 750. You'll see why they vary. So we've got 3 and 2. And then I spend a little bit of time marking up all the sleepers on my big work table here, and then pre-drilling, just so we get a nice smooth transition through these pine. They actually turned out to be quite soft in the end, so it must be fairly new timber. And one trick I've learnt is to just put in the first screw like that, so it's level with the top. That's looking pretty good, but it swings out a bit at the bottom. So grabbing hold of a T-square or set square, just making sure that it's nice and level. And as soon as you do that, of course, if you do it from the get-go, it makes everything else line up and look a little bit neater and more professional. So then I put in the second one quickly so that it doesn't move, and then we lock it away. The whole project here is going to be built in the workshop and then labelled and then dismantled and taken outside, because it's just far too big and heavy to shift once it's put together. As you can see here, there are the 3 bins, and here I'm just lining up this last one here on the second floor, the second layer, and then I quickly go around the back and just put another 3 screws in just to hold it. So it takes shape pretty good, and you can see the overlapping side bit there. This one's 75mm long, and the back panel, of course, is 190 centimetres wide, so it's not as wide as the one below it. So it's not really a structural thing, it's just something to make it fit together a little bit neater. And I'm using clamps here just to make sure everything's nice and straight before fitting the front fascia panels. And as you can see here, it just works quite nicely. It's very good, easy timber to work with, if a little bit heavy. So the fascia panels, I screwed together like this, the 2 fascia panels, and then quickly dropped some drill holes through that, some screw holes. It's a good little trick just to screw something together so that you can get them in a register. It doesn't really matter, I could have just done it freehand, but I kind of like having all the screws that are visible, the screw heads that are visible, at least on the same level, as you can see here. And just to put a door on the front of each bin, I'm just using this junk timber, with the idea that I didn't really want to use expensive bought timber for something that's probably going to rot fairly quickly, and I'll just replace it. The next thing to do was to build the lid, and I decided to use the edges or the uprights from this old frame that I had knocking around for a number of years. Turned out to be cedar, so it's fantastic. So I built 2 frames just using simple butt joints, and I got hold of some reasonably inexpensive plastic, I don't know what you really call them, plastic sheets really, that are fairly rigid. I suppose it's a little bit like plastic cardboard really, if you can think about that, and it's pretty rigid. So I routed out some insets there, as you can see on the right hand side, before painting it all with this water-soluble decking oil, and then went outside to try and level the land. So a couple of the bins were already there, so I've moved the plastic bins out of the way, got the land nice and level, leaving it bare earth, of course, because you want worms to get in and out through the bottom. And it's a pretty good seal, so we're not going to get rodents, hopefully, burrowing down into it. So having taken it all apart, making sure that I labelled it all as neatly as possible, we now put it back together in the field in situ. And that's a bit of an exciting exercise, because you find out whether you've actually got it all lined up nicely. But providing it's labelled fairly carefully, again, I've said this before, it works quite nicely and it all screws together into the same screw holes, hopefully. So it all lines up. Being armed with a mallet is always a really good thing, because you can just bash things a little bit more back into shape or into lineup, so that it all fits together perfectly. So take a bit of time to line it all up, and Bob's your uncle. There's the initial 3 bins. There's some compost that's going to go in the bins from the original plastic ones. And there's the finished article with the picture frame and plastic lids in situ, just after a little rainstorm. So it looks pretty good.